Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. Let me get us right. Okay. Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Hopefully, you're here for your brain isn't broken. It just may need a new plan. I'm excited tonight to talk to you about all things chronic stress. Um, If you're functioning on the outside, but really feeling like you're falling apart on the inside, this is for you. Okay. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about why it's happening. We're going to put science behind it. And most importantly, we're going to talk about what do we do about it, right? What are the things that we can do to help those pieces and help us deactivate. We're going to talk a lot tonight about the sympathetic spiral of doom, right? So when we're always up here and everything is here, and what that does to our body, and then how can we start to deactivate that to help us with better health span and longevity. So I hope that's what you're here for. I'm really excited. Let me tell you a little bit about me. So, who am I and why do I have the right to talk about this? Okay. So, I actually started my military career in emergency medicine, where I spent many years on the front lines, as you know, doing emergencies, high stress care. At the same time, I'm a Navy physician with multiple deployments. And so I have direct personal understanding of operational stress. And then I decided to found my medical practice, which is called Lush Lifestyle, and I practice now integrative medicine. And I truly believe that people deserve more than a rushed appointment and normal lab results. So I focus my practice on hormone health, metabolic health, root cause medicine, and really connecting the dots between your brain, your body, and what you actually feel. Okay. So that's a little bit about who I am and why we're here tonight. So let's get started. Okay. So you can raise your hand, throw some emojis, whatever it is. But if any of this sounds familiar, then you're in the right spot. Okay. Brain fog. Anybody suffer from that? Anxiety that won't settle. Exhaustion after you sleep. Even when you sleep and you wake up and you're exhausted. What about mood shifts that you can't explain? What about sugar or salt cravings that are out of control? Any of these sound familiar? Right? Your brain may be trying to tell you something that honestly your labs aren't capturing because we're looking in the wrong spot, right? Or the labs don't always tell the whole picture. And so this is what we're going to start unpacking tonight and looking at some things. And I wanted to start with why I chose this topic and in this month. And many of you may know that June is actually PTSD Awareness Month and Mental Health Awareness Month. So I believe that brain health and trauma are connected. They are not separate topics. And what happens in our nervous system every single day shapes our brain function. And you can't really address one without addressing the other. I truly believe that. Even medically, we cannot heal from something medical, even our gut, if we do not work on our brain health, right? If our nervous system is chronically in fight or flight or the sympathetic spiral of doom, you are not going to be able to heal, period. We don't have enough resources. And I'm going to show you why tonight, and why I also think that this is really important to do, and a framework that I want you to leave with tonight, right? A true framework that you can start. It's a beginning, right? It's a beginning. It's not all the things, but start kind of unpacking this with at least a clear next step to see what's happening, evaluate it, and where you may need support. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is some really cool topics. How chronic stress rewires the brain. That's right. Chronic stress actually rewires our brain. It actually affects neurotransmitters. Okay, we're going to look at the connection between your hormones and your nervous system. If you haven't figured that out already, that exists, it does, right? It's very real. We're going to look at what high functioning survival mode really looks like. And I'm going to take a guess, but the majority of you here tonight, or ones that are going to be watching on the replay, are high functioning females. I can almost guess that because this is what happens to us. And we're going to look at what that actually looks like and potentially why that's happening. Well, take a quick look at PTSD, burnout, and overstimulation and how they affect not just the brain, but physically our body. Okay. And then we'll look at what brain supportive tools actually exist. And then when mental wellness needs more than just mindset changes. Okay. And then we'll close with a live Q&A. So you can write your questions down, or if you think about them, you can put them in the chat and I'll answer them at the end. And we'll go over those and talk about stuff. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's go. Okay. How chronic stress rewires your brain. All right. So this is your stress response system. Okay. Your brain, your pituitary gland, your adrenal gland. And guess what? They're all working together in one circuit. So here's something cool. Your brain perceives a threat. And that threat can be real or it can be perceived. So remember, our stress response system was made for those times when we have to run away from a saber-toothed tiger, or you see those moms that pick up cars because their kid is under it. That is what this stress response was made for. But guess what? The brain can't decide whether you need to pick up that car or when you are stressed because you have too many emails or you're trying to make a deadline, or it doesn't know the difference between those. So guess what it does? It activates this system. Okay. And when it activates a system, your brain signals your adrenal glands and says, hey, you have to respond. Guess what's in the adrenal glands? Cortisol. And listen, a lot of times cortisol gets a bad rap, right? Because everybody thinks cortisol and belly fat and all these things. And yes, cortisol, chronic, elevated cortisol, is bad for us. Short bursts of cortisol, we actually need cortisol to live, right? There is a medical condition where people don't make cortisol and they have to take steroids for the rest of their life to actually live. So we need it. We just don't want it chronically all of the time. Okay. So typically, we perceive this threat, whether it's a saber-toothed tiger or it's a deadline that we have. And then after that threat dissipates, the cortisol will drop back down, right? That system, like I said, was built for the short bursts. It wasn't meant to be switched on all day and stay on all day. Okay. And when what we see in chronic stress is that reset never happens. That reset button never happens. And guess what happens when that happens? And we know this from decades of research, including brain studies that we do. It shows that chronic stress doesn't just feel different, but it can actually change the structure of the brain, right? And it changes the structure and function in these three key areas. So the hippocampus, which is involved in memory and learning. So think about that. So chronic stress is associated with some shrinkage in the hippocampus. I don't want shrinkage, right, in my memory and learning. Chronic stress plays a role in the amygdala. And the amygdala is our brain's alarm system. And guess what chronic stress does in the alarm system? It certainly doesn't deactivate it. It makes it more responsive and more reactive. So smaller triggers produce a bigger alarm than they used to. And this is why some people will tell me when they know they're chronically stressed, and a lot of times this is perimenopausal women because high cortisol and hormones, which we'll get to. They'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't stand the sound of him chewing or her or my coworker, or they open and close this and it was annoying when that never used to bother you before. That amygdala is getting activated by that chronic cortisol. Okay. Then add in the prefrontal cortex, which is basically what the CEO of our brains, right? It's where we do all of our executive functioning. We do our motivation comes from there, our emotional regulation. And guess what? If when we have chronic stress in there, it decreases the connectivity. So it's harder to think clear. It's harder to stay regulated. It's harder to initiate tasks. It's harder to feel motivated to want to do anything. Okay. And guess what? The best part about this is that we usually typically blame ourselves. I don't have enough willpower, right? I can't do this. I used to be able to. What's wrong with me? Nothing, right? It's not, it's biology. It's not you. It's not willpower. It's cortisol. Okay. It's cortisol. So this is what this looks like in real life to real human beings, because abstract neuroscience is great, but what does this actually look like? Okay, it shows up every day in very specific ways. So maybe you identify with one of these. Weight that won't budge. Okay. Chronically elevated cortisol shifts how your body stores fat and regulates blood sugar. Guess what it does? Your abdomen has a lot of cortisol receptors, right? And so, guess what? When you're chronically stressed, you get weight gain in your belly. Okay. That cortisol is elevated, it goes right to those cortisol receptors. Then, high levels of cortisol can make you insulin resistant. Increase insulin resistance, increase fat storage, increase belly fat. Oh, then by the way, belly fat is also what? Inflammatory, right? It is metabolic, visceral fat. So we don't like it and it's bad for us. Okay, maybe this one, sleep doesn't restore you. An overactive stress system makes it harder to fall asleep, stay asleep, and reach those deep restorative portions of sleep, right? Deep sleep and REM. You're not getting restoration. Even though you may be sleeping, right? And you may be in bed for that period of time, you're not getting restorative sleep. Okay. What about anxiety that feels disproportionate? A more reactive amygdala means your alarm system fires faster and louder than moments that you call for. Okay. So faster and louder, that amygdala's going a little crazy. What about cravings that you can't logic your way out of? Right? Have you ever like, why do I have this like salt craving at, 9 p.m.? Okay, that's what happens. Cortisol gets elevated. And what did we say that it does when it's elevated? It increases our insulin resistance. So when we have increased insulin resistance, a lot of times we can crave sugar and salt. It's your body doing that, right? It doesn't feel like it's gotten the nutrients that it needs. Main point here is that this isn't based on willpower. This is based on the fact that we have this biological process going on. This cortisol is elevated and it's wreaking havoc on everything. Then maybe we add in some hormonal stuff. Let's check that out. Hormones. Let's see. Okay. Two systems, one conversation. This is really true, and I'm sure you've heard this other places, but there is a gut-brain axis, right? And then there is a gut estrogen axis. The estrobolome is in the gut. All of these things are talk to each other. Okay. And both of these systems are controlled by the same thing, the brain, the hypothalamus, right? And they crosstalk to each other. So cortisol has an effect on hormones, and hormones, either the high or depletion of hormones, have a direct effect on cortisol, right? What is the biggest time when cortisol goes up? It's when in perimenopause, when we start to become estrogen, with estrogen deficit, right? As our estrogen goes down, guess what happens? Our cortisol goes up. That alone happens in perimenopause. So then if you add on chronic stress to that, that becomes a problem. Okay. What else? What if you have periods? What if you're not in perimenopause or you're in menopause? And what if the week before your period, you have all these issues? Guess what? That's when your estrogen is the lowest, even if you're not perimenopausal or menopausal. That is when your estrogen is your lowest. So it's connected to the cortisol. And then again, if you're stressed on top of it, bringing in more cortisol, this can be a problem. And that's why the day to day can look like that. Stress points can look different in your cycle. Okay. Perimenopause can feel like everything fell apart, and usually it does, right? Because we're losing the other capacities that we had. So it's two things happening. If we did not have the chronic stress and the elevated cortisol from that, and we were just dealing with cyclical times or perimenopause and menopause, we may be able to cope. But now we're adding a double whammy because we have chronic stress. Okay. Because maybe we have a lot of kids we're taking care of. Maybe we're taking care of our sick parents as well. Maybe we are big CEOs and raising 8 kids and these amazing women doing these amazing things. So it's not just chronic stress and or hormones, but it's both together. And when we put both of them together, you can imagine what happens, right? Things like, I used to handle this fine, but now I can't. That is huge, right? That is huge. Okay, I want to talk about something which is called high functioning survival mode. And I said this when I started, but I bet you almost every single woman here or watching in replay is in this high functioning survival mode. This is a pattern that we see over and over and over again. It's not a diagnosis. It is a descriptive pattern that we use when someone's nervous system is in a chronic threat state. Okay, but you are still performing. Okay. And here's what this actually looks like. You're excelling at work, but you fall apart at home. Okay. You're always anticipating that next step, the next problem. And then you're making like plans for that, right? Before it ever even happens or surfaces. You struggle to rest. Even when you're given time to, you actually don't know how, right? Your brain doesn't, you're like, oh, here's a Sunday afternoon, go do what you want. And you're like, okay, what am I going to do with work? And what am I going to do with the kids? And what am I going to do with this over here and that over here? And you don't even know how to rest. How many women have been told that? Like, you don't know. I get told that all the time. Like, do you ever rest? You don't know how to rest. Well, maybe I don't. Maybe my brain doesn't. Okay. What about being the reliable one that everyone leans on? That's tough, right? Because these things can make up who we are, right? And then we can feel fine until guess what? Our body says, no, you're not going to feel fine anymore. And we're usually the last people to get help, right? The strongest people are usually the last to get help. And there's three reasons for this. One is competency becomes camouflage. How we compensate, how we mask, that becomes our camouflage. We're still performing, and it looks to the outside like we're performing well. They don't see us crying in our car or in the bathroom at home. So for everyone else around us, we're still functioning well. And sometimes we believe that too, right? Because we're like, okay, well, I'm still going to work. I'm still doing this. I'm still meeting my deadlines. I'm still the CEO. I'm still the mother of 8 kids and killing it. Maybe I'm falling apart in the closet. Maybe I'm crying in my car, but it's okay. Okay? No, no. Asking for help can feel like admitting that the system you've built to survive is cracking. And that's a hard reality, right? It's like I've built all of this around me and now it's all falling apart. And a lot of times we see that our beautiful high functioning selves only seek support after a forcing event. And this is why we see this a lot in midlife when perimenopause and menopause come into play, because that hormonal shift does not allow us to regulate any of this anymore. But a lot of times it could be a health scare or a breakup or a relationship rupture that forces us to actually get the help that we need. Okay? Because we're still performing, right? And it takes something to break us for us to say, okay, I want to get help or I need help, right? I can't do this anymore. Now let's take a look at PTSD, burnout, and some overstimulation. I don't know how many of you have heard this term called the allostatic load, but it is a medical term. It was first described by some researchers, and really it's a cool term. It refers to the cumulative wear and tear on your body from repeated stress over time. Okay? And it touches four systems: cardiovascular, so it can elevate blood pressure and heart rate patterns over time. Why do we think women get tachycardia? And also, why are they, 1 in 4 women die from heart disease? There's a lot of different reasons, but this is one. Autonomic system, so our nervous system is stuck firing between fight or flight and shutdown. Okay. Our immune system. So we get chronic low grade inflammation that affects our overall health. And that's a problem. Chronic low grade inflammation is a huge problem when it occurs over time. It is the driver of disease, it is the driver of cancers. Okay. It is the driver of obesity. And then we add in metabolic, right? So now we have insulin resistance and our mitochondria are not doing well. And now we have no energy. Big piece. Okay. Big piece. Allostatic load. Okay. Then we can get in this, what I call the sympathetic spiral of doom, but basically, right, when fight or flight gets stuck. Okay, we're stuck in fight or flight. You probably heard of that, right? Fight or flight is a term everybody knows, but sometimes you can get stuck in that. Racing heart, restlessness, irritability, feeling constantly on and not being able to turn off, brain fog, numbness, difficulty making even the smallest decisions, and shutdown and exhaustion that rest doesn't touch. Then what happens? We get flatness and disconnection. Sound like anybody out there? Okay. This is what happens when we get in that sympathetic spiral of doom and we can't get out. Okay. We are stuck. But Dr. Sarah, they say my labs are normal, but I still feel terrible. Nervous system dysregulation often shows up as physical symptoms that get treated separately. Okay. And they're not, they're one picture. Digestive issues, bloating, irregularity, all of that gets blamed on take a probiotic. Okay. Cardiovascular symptoms, palpitations, blood pressure changes, chest tightness. Take an aspirin, go wear a Holter monitor. It's a nervous system stuck on that can affect your overall health, right? Think about when you're running away from that saber-toothed tiger, you want your heart rate to go up. It's a compensatory mechanism. But if your heart rate is doing that every day, all day, that is not a good thing. Okay, that isn't a good thing. So who carries the heaviest load? It's a good question, don't you think? Who carries it? So when we look at this, we look at like repeated exposures to high stakes stress, which means a cumulative higher load on the nervous system over time, right? So a more of an allostatic load. This is why veterans, right, our military members, operational stress and trauma exposed during service, that's a lot. That's a big allostatic load over and over and over again. First responders, right? When we get repeated exposure to acute crises and trauma, healthcare workers, caregivers, high stake individuals, right? People that are responsible for everyone's well being. Hello, that's all of us, right? That's all of us. If we compound these things on top of each other, and we didn't even get into the fact that a lot of people have childhood trauma, right? So now we have childhood trauma that we have added on to this, and we're not able to break that cycle and get out of that sympathetic drive. Guess what? This is a problem. Okay, this is a problem over time. So thanks for naming all the problems, right? But what can we actually do about it? And I do want to say that this is actually very individualized because there's certain things that are going to work for certain people and certain things that don't work as well. And I'll give you an example. I am not going to do yoga. I don't like yoga. Yoga doesn't settle my brain. I'm not going to sit in a restorative position for 10 minutes. It hurts and I don't want to do it. It actually makes me more stressed. So we talk about basic principles, but then we have to find those things that work for us. And that is so important. Today in medicine or any health thing that we're doing, we're listening to, like, we have all of this information at our fingertips, and we're listening to the influencer or this person or that person because we want answers, right? Because we feel bad. But what works for them isn't necessarily going to work for you. Now, foundational principles can work, but you have to adapt them to who you are and what your body needs. Okay? So the nervous system regulation, so there are broad evidence-based categories, again, not one size fits all, that work. So movement, for example, right? Regular physical activity is one of the most consistently supported ways to lower your baseline stress over time. Now, how you move is your choice. Maybe that is yoga for you. Maybe it is Pilates. Maybe for me, it's CrossFit and boxing and, turning up the music loud. But movement is the fundamental principle. Okay, movement. Maybe it's going for a walk, going to the beach and going for a walk. Maybe it's lifting heavy weights. Movement is the principle. Okay, and sleep. Your stress system resets during sleep. Sleep is so, so foundational. And it's very hard, right? In first off, in midlife, sleep is like not working at all for us. So everyone's saying, like, just sleep better. That sounds really nice, right? But it's not that easy. But it is that important, right? We have got to find the ways that that works for us. Then we can have breath and body based practices. So we do this a lot. Practices that engage the vagus nerve. Remember that the vagus nerve is our parasympathetic. So if we are stuck in chronic fight or flight in a sympathetic spiral of doom, if we can activate that parasympathetic, that vagus nerve, that can help take us down. That's why box breathing works. Right? There's all different ways you can add. There's actually vagus device tools that you can stimulate on your vagus nerve to help take you down. Okay. And you're not going from here to here, you're going from here to here, right? Then to here, right? We want to just get you out of that sympathetic spiral of doom. Big piece, big piece. Okay. You want to have that parasympathetic activation, whatever that is for you, because we need to get that down. And then, of course, obviously, if things are tough, working with a therapist. What I would also say here, which is very important and I should have put on there, is social connection, having a community. Okay. There is a reason why group support groups work because you're around other people who are having the same issues. And guess what? Loneliness is equivocal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness is equivocal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. You've got to find your tribe. If you are doing this in isolation, you're actually doing a disservice to yourself. You're smoking 15 cigarettes a day, right? Just consider yourself a smoker now. You've got to go. This is the whole part of our mission is to create community, to bring everybody together so we can talk about the things. And we can say, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Or, oh, I tried, a sauna, I didn't love it. Or I tried restorative yoga, I didn't like it. And then someone can say, oh, maybe you should try this. And maybe that's the thing, right? But there is joy. And actually it decreases and activates our parasympathetic nervous system. So it decreases that sympathetic drive. Super duper important. Okay, so what does physician-led care actually mean if you need some help? It's really looking at you as a person, and I would recommend this for every single person. And the reason is that sometimes what we think is chronic stress, brain fog, a lot of times that has a metabolomic equal. Right. So sometimes it could be your thyroid. Sometimes it is hormones, right? Sometimes your vitamin D is too low. A lot of times it's your gut. You make the majority of your serotonin in your gut. Yeah, in your gut. So some of these things that we're feeling actually can be metabolic. So I always recommend a full lab panel. And not, when I say full lab panel, I mean not, a CBC, a CMP, and lipids and call it a day. No, we got to look at iron stores and high sensitivity CRP and homocysteine and a full thyroid panel. And don't worry, and you're going to get your PDF that follows up with this, so you will get that in there so you can look at it. I even put in ways to speak to your physician. And some talk tracks of how to talk to them about, what you're feeling and what you're looking for as far as getting a workup. And then really most importantly is whatever they come up with or we come up with, it has to fit around your life. So if you are a busy mom raising 8 kids, teenagers, and you got parents at home, sick parents that you're taking care of, what we do to figure out how to deactivate you from that sympathetic spiral of doom, it has to fit into your life. If I tell you, you need to sauna for an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half at night, and you need to go for, 2 walks a day, you're not going to be able to do that. That doesn't fit with your life. So we have to find the things that fit with your life. Okay. One of the tools that I use in my practice is pretty amazing. It's called ExoMind. And no matter where you are in the world, you probably can find one of these. So if anything I say about this fits, you can look it up. But it's an FDA approved device for major depressive disorder, anxiety, PTSD, general mental wellness. It is transcranial magnetic stimulation. Okay. And it works on the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. What did we say is happening in chronic stress? That prefrontal cortex is affected. That's where we make dopamine and executive functioning. Add on hormonal problems, low estrogen and testosterone also affect the prefrontal cortex. So, ExoMind is amazing. It uses small, gentle magnetic pulses. I know it sounds scary, but it isn't. And it goes right on that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And basically, what it does is it causes neuroplasticity. It tells those neurons, wake the heck up, right? Start making the progesterone now. Start making the dopamine. Start making, the oxytocin, right? Come on, wake up. It's time to wake up. You've been dormant for too long. Okay. So again, it's not for everybody, but it can be a powerful tool to get you from that sympathetic spiral of doom down, deactivate your parasympathetic nervous system. One of the other amazing things that this technology does is it almost universally helps every single person sleep, which we've just named it as a huge piece. Okay. So it can be a really, really, really effective tool in helping us come down from that, sympathetic spiral of doom. Okay. And then what do we do when mindset isn't enough? Okay. So when do we pull the trigger? When is enough enough? When do we seek more self-help? Okay, maybe you've tried the apps, maybe you've tried journaling, whatever. Maybe your labs are normal, right? And you're managing these symptoms. Okay, and you're the person everyone relies on. So what do we do? Right? What do we do? Your brain isn't broken, it just needs a new plan. Okay, so let's look at that. Your brain just needs a better plan. Chronic stress, we talked about this earlier, physically reshapes your brain. Physically. It's not a character flaw, right? Your hormones and your nervous system are in constant communication with each other. We talked about that. Okay. Um, you're not broken, right? We're high functioning, we're struggling. We've got to support our body and give it exactly what it needs. Okay. And interestingly, when we look at this and we take a deeper dive, sometimes that's as simple as you need some magnesium, right? Magnesium is responsible for 300 enzymatic reactions in the body, right? Sometimes we just need that offload. Magnesium will help us. Sometimes optimizing our vitamin D. And listen, I look at labs all day long. A vitamin D level of 30 is not optimal. Okay? A vitamin D level of 30 is not optimal. People will say it is, but it isn't. It's not optimal. Okay. So what are we going to do? And that's why it's important. Here's another thing. Here's a little quiz. What is in depression? Okay, in depression, what is the most nutrient deficiency in depression? The biggest nutrient deficiency in depression, guess what? B6. Okay. B6 deficiency is the biggest. Now, that doesn't mean that you take B6 and we're going to cure depression. No, I don't mean that. Right. But these things are powerful tools, and sometimes we're not looking at them. Here's another example, thyroid. So, thyroid, a lot of times you're getting a TSH and a T4. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll get a T3. Remember, T3 is your active thyroid. Then, a lot of times, they're missing TPO antibodies. Guess what, ladies? Your TPO antibodies can be elevated. Basically, your body's attacking your thyroid, but your thyroid looks normal. Guess what? That chronic indling that we talked about, inflammation, guess what that does over time? And it affects cortisol, right? It increases the cortisol and makes that go up, which what did we say? Then that activates belly fat. I know I said this earlier, but it's a really cool statistic. The biggest amount of cortisol receptors we have is in the abdomen, which completely and utterly explains why when we're chronically stressed and cortisol is up, it goes to the belly, and also why if we're in our later portions of our life, perimenopause and menopause, why it goes to our belly, right? Because cortisol is chronically activated. One of the other things that's very important that we can do, and we can start doing that today or tomorrow or whenever Amazon could come, is to start looking at our own data. So if you have a wearable, So it can be a Whoop strap, it can be an Oura ring, it can be an Apple Watch. You have to start looking at your data. And you have to start looking at that predictability and pattern predictability of what's going on. So it's not enough to just say, I'm not sleeping, right? If I saw you as a patient, I would want to interpret your data. So what does not sleeping mean? Oh, you weren't able to fall asleep. And then I look, oh my gosh, they're not getting REM sleep. They're not getting deep sleep. They're restless all night. But that gives us actual data that we can focus on. Okay, maybe that your sleep latency is messed up. Well, we can look at that. What is your heart rate variability? What is your HRV? What is that doing throughout the month? So wearables give you your own personal data, which is really nice, right? Because what did we say? This is about personalized medicine. You know, what that influencer, and I like influencers, but what that influencer says we should do, everybody should do this, right? Everybody should cold plunge. Everybody should intermittently fast. First off, if you ever hear someone say everybody, you got to turn around and run away because nothing, I repeat this, nothing works for everybody. It doesn't exist. There's not a single thing, not a pill in medicine, not a peptide, not a supplement, not a biohack. Not every single thing works for everybody. Again, the basic principles do, but you have to find those things that work for you. Okay. The other thing we can do is, especially if we're really suffering from the cortisol perspective from chronic stress, is you can get a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. Okay. This happens and looks at real time what our blood sugar is. Okay. So you can actually see. I'm going to do a little disclaimer though before I say this. If you are someone that is going to look at data and overanalyze it, and do things about that, right? So like, oh my gosh, my blood sugar went up. Okay, I'm not going to eat for 4 hours. Please don't get a CGM. Okay, it's not meant for everybody, but it can be a very good tool to see how your body blood sugar personally reacts to things. So I've tested this out of myself and hundreds and hundreds of clients. And I will literally wear my CGM and I will compare days when I'm really, really stressed to compares to days when I'm not. Right. So on days when I have like a really big patient load, I spend a lot of time with my patients and I put my heart and soul into them. And so that can be very taxing for me, right? That can actually be stressful. So I'll look at those days versus days when I have less, have more admin stuff to do. And I'll compare what my blood sugars were. And I can tell based on that how high my cortisol levels were. Now, it's not a direct correlation, but I can say, holy crud, I spent, 4 hours basically in fight or flight. And you feel that. Those are the days you go home and you're like, I can't do another thing and it's only 6 p.m. Right? I cannot, like, my brain is fried, my body is fried. Even if you sat at your desk and didn't do any movement, which you should be, right? You can feel that mental and physical exhaustion. That is your body overtaxing and overworking for significant periods of time. So looking at our own data is very powerful, and then being able to play. So put things in perspective to what works for us. So obviously looking at our complete picture of our medical health. If you're somebody that suffers from gut issues, I have irritable bowel or I'm always bloated or these things, I really would suggest functional gut testing. Okay. It can be a little pricey, but it's worth the investment if you have gut issues. Gut health is huge and impacts a lot of things. And sometimes, and I'll give you a clinical example of this, what's going on in our gut is actually contributing to why we're stuck in this sympathetic spiral of doom, right? So, for example, I just had a client who was like, listen, Dr. Sarah, I started having a belly pain 2 years ago. Like, she remembered like the exact day. And she's like, from that moment on, I've had anxiety. I've had tachycardia. I've had to go to the hospital multiple times. Nobody can figure out what's wrong with me. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, have you ever been exposed to mold? And she was like, well, yeah, actually, when that was happening, we lived in this place that had a lot of mold. And I was like, okay. So we do functional gut testing. And I kid you not, as I pull up her results, I'm pulling up her symptoms. And guess what? The correlation was unbelievable. High glutamate, all her excitatory neurotransmitters were elevated, all because she had leaky gut and gut dysbiosis. Okay. Healing isn't linear. Okay. It takes a while to heal from that, but we have the answer. She has the answer now. So we have to make sure that we're looking down those right paths and we have to find those things that work for us. And we should have baseline supplementation. Again, not everything works for everybody, but I haven't met probably a single person that can't take magnesium. Magnesium does what? 400 enzymatic reactions in the body. Okay. You need it just for neurotransmitters to develop. You need it for all of these things to happen. Here's another thing. I'm going to nerd out on you a minute. So sorry. What is this? This is the electron transport chain of the mitochondria. Sorry, this camera. If we don't have adequate B vitamins and if we don't have CoQ10, we're not going to make enough energy, right? So fundamental nutritional status is very important on a macro and micronutrient level. What do I say when you're stuck in chronic fight or flight? What do I say? Are you under eating protein and fiber? Do you know how much protein and fiber you should be eating? Because it's a lot more than you think. And then actually, are you eating that amount? Right? So one of the things you're going to get in your tool is a GPT that I created. And you can click on it. There's a lot of prompts in there. But what I'm going to challenge you to do for the next week is to actually document symptoms, how you're feeling. And it's super easy. I created it that way. You talk into the GPT on your phone. So it's like, okay, I just ate a ham sandwich with eggs and mayonnaise and blah, 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 Pick it up. You're at work, you're writing something, feel completely and utterly stressed. Okay. I feel better. Slept well. Slept terrible. Whatever it is, it's meant to be very quick and easy. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to write anything. Then you can say, hey, you're at the end of the week, and you can say, hey, can you write me or show me my pattern predictability this week of my symptoms? Okay. Oh, look, you were in chronic fight or flight basically Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from these times. Then you can start to look at and say, what was I doing Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at those times? Right? Because again, high functioning people, we don't want to admit there's an issue because then all the things that we worked for would be for naught, I guess, which is not true. We deserve to be able to function within our system safely. I'm going to say that again. We deserve to be able to function inside our system safely, whatever that looks like for us. And we haven't really talked about the neurodivergent lens, and I don't want to dive too much in there because it is my forte and I talk about it all the time. But if you are someone who identifies with neurodivergence, ADHD, autism, AUHD, then this can be even more challenging. Okay. And actually even more stimulating as we already have issues from a dopamine perspective of the brain. Okay. So if I can leave you, you're going to, before we go to the Q&A, if I can leave you with one thing, and you're going to get your PDF and all the things you can do, but it really is to start from ground zero. What is happening in my body hormonally, metabolomically, right? Nervous system wise, what is happening right now? Start using that GPT, start tracking your patterns, start seeing, am I eating protein, right? You should be eating, don't kill me for saying this, 1.2 grams of protein for ideal body weight. That is a lot. How many of you know how much protein you're actually intaking now? But you will in a week, right? After you use the GPT, because you're going to track it. This is what I see in my clinic over and over again. Dr. Sarah, I'm eating enough protein. I'm doing well. I'm eating enough protein. Okay, just track it for me. I made this tracker. Just do me a favor and track it. Guess what? Almost universally, women, because I treat men too, right? Women will come back somewhere between 60 to 65 grams of protein a day, when the average woman really needs like 135. Okay, guess what happens? Cortisol goes up, insulin resistance goes up. Remember, if we're under fueling our body, our metabolism is going to slow down, right? Because it's sensing starvation mode. It's basically like, oh, I don't know when she's going to eat again. And what's the problem with that? When we have chronic cortisol, remember we said all the cortisol receptors are in the abdomen. So when we're getting this, belly fat, what do? We calorically restrict. That's just by nature. Unfortunately, we've been taught that. We calorically restrict, which guess what it does? It makes us gain more weight. And women will tell me that all the time. I eat less, but I'm still gaining weight. Yes, yes. And it's because you're under fueling yourself. And you're telling the system that the system isn't safe, right? And so now the system makes more cortisol, right? Slows down the metabolism, makes more cortisol, which then goes to that belly fat, causes more insulin resistance. Can you see this cascade of events? So, sympathetic spiral of doom, chronically being sympathetic and chronic cortisol is so much more than just saying, I'm sympathetic and I have a lot of cortisol. A lot of it goes into it. A lot of things go into it. So, start tracking. Okay. I do want you to get evaluations from your providers. You can use the GPT and the PDF to help you if you don't think that they will understand or the questions. You can use that GPT to help you formulate your scripts. It's part of the reason why I made it, help you formulate your scripts for them. But start tracking today. If you have a wearable, great. If you get a CGM, even better. But use the GPT and start tracking your own patterns, because the biggest thing we can do for ourselves is to see where our patterns are. And guess what? They say this in medicine all the time. We teach this to residents. You'll never diagnose what you don't think of. The same's true for us. Okay. We're never going to find the problem unless we're looking. Okay. If we're like, oh, I think I'm eating good on protein, but we're most not. Statistically, we're not. You need to look. You need to see how much protein you're eating. And by the way, another disclaimer, you don't need to go from eating 60 one week to 135 the next week. You will kill me and be mad and never come to anything I do again. But no, we need a slow and steady increase. Okay, what I usually do with my patients is, okay, let's say you're on 65 grams. Okay, great. Now, next week, I want you to take in 70 grams every day, right? And we try to find those 10 grams somewhere. I have some really cool tips and tricks, right? If you like salt, I have these cool edamame beans that are roasted, that are salty. They have 12 grams of protein, 2 grams of fiber, 110 calories. They fit in the palm of your hand. So they're amazing for, us busy women that I shove those in every day, take a drink of my water, and go see the next patient, right? There's a lot of things that we can do to start fueling that system to help us come down from there. Fuel the system properly, make sure we're getting the micro macronutrients, helping to try to fix our sleep, which I know it can be tough. Start with simple magnesium, right? As long as you have no contraindications. That can help a majority of people. 60% of people's sleep will improve just by adding magnesium. Now, is it the thing for everybody? No, right? Nothing is, remember, but it could be, and it's the culmination of all of the things. So if we start tracking, we add some of this, we make sure our protein, it's right, it's all those little levers coming together that really creates the overall. Okay. Okay, so let's see if there is any questions. And listen, if you don't feel like sharing or coming on to share, you can send the questions to me by email. I'll answer every single one of them. But what I will say is if you do feel comfortable sharing, if you have the questions, so does someone else. So feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can come off mute. Or like I said, you can literally answer them, send me an email and I'll answer them personally for you. While we wait to see if anyone has any questions, check your emails in about an hour because I need to go there and send you it. But your PDF will be there. Work through that. Take your time, work through it. Also, your GPT. Okay. So, and thank you, camera, for getting so close to me. Your GPT will be in there. Start using it tonight. Okay, I ate this amount of food, document that. I did this, document that. I also built in there, like you can literally tell it what's going on in your life. Okay, these are my symptoms. This is what's happening. What is the easiest way for me to, activate my parasympathetic nervous system? And then pick one thing. Pick one thing that it tells you and just try it for the next couple of days. It's not about overwhelming the system. It's really about, honestly, the small levers that we pull over time, right? We pull this one and we pull this one, and then the insulin resistance goes down, right? And then we don't have as much cortisol, and then the belly goes down, and then we feel better, and then we work out, right? And then we're eating better, and then the insulin resistance goes down more, and then the cortisol goes down more, right? There's no fix. I wish there was. If it was, I would bottle it up and give it to everybody for free. But there isn't. It's all of those little things that we do. And really, ladies, honestly, understanding who we are, where we are in our time of life, whether we're new moms or not moms, or, CEOs, like I said, or running, doing whatever, or maybe we're 70 and 80 and we're in a different space in life, right? We don't have a lot of, our kids are all independent and everything is good. But we have to find those communities. We have to see what our nervous system is doing and why, and start to try to deactivate it. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Look for your email. Make sure to check your junk if you don't see it. And then obviously mark me not spam. Okay. And work through that. If you have any questions, you have access, email me. I'm happy to answer all of those one-on-one. And if you do identify in the neurodivergent lens, come to the masterclass tomorrow night, which is the biology of the neurodivergent brain. We're going to actually talk about ADHD and autism and how that actually affects hormones, affect that, cortisol, all the things affect the neurodivergent brain and how it's different. So if you do identify with that, then come, please, please, please. But if not, then all of you have an amazing night. Thank you for joining me, and check your email. See you soon.